Good morning to all. I am Ashish Engantiwar. First and most, I welcome you all participants and thank you very much to everyone attendees for joining this live event. I welcome you, Dr. Pankaj Sakdev, on behalf of Head of the Department of Physics and Principal of Deccan Education Society's Ferguson College, Autonomous Pune, under the status of DBT Star College scheme. Here I want to introduce about the speaker and presently give an academic journey of Dr. Pankaj Sakdev. Dr. Sakdev is currently working as an associate professor in the discipline of physics, Indian Institute of Technology, Indore, Madhya Pradesh. He completed his bachelor's degree in year 1999 from Nagpur University, Nagpur, as my classmate of BSc in Mathura Das Mohta Science College, Nagpur. After that, he has done his master's from the University of Pune in 2001. For his doctoral work, he demonstrated structural origin and importance of strain responsible for various electronic and magnetic phases observed in a perovskite oxide from UGCDE CSR Indore in year 2007. Along with he has worked as a research associate at UGCDE CSR Indore. After completing the PhD, Dr. Sakdev joined the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, BARC, in 2008 as a scientific officer D, where he set up the state-of-the-art coating facilities for optical and neutron mirror applications at BARC, Mumbai. Later in 2012, Dr. Sakdev joined Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Indore, as an assistant professor. In IIT Indore, Dr. Sakdev is involved in a research and teaching and established a material research laboratory which works on the physics of highly correlated electron systems, quantum confinement in a nanocrystalline system, and scientific instrumentation development. Dr. Sakdev is having a strong hold on various important sample characterization technique and has published more than 75 research papers in various journals. He is also playing a role of reviewer in a high impact journal like IOP, Elsevier, MRS, Wiley, Springer, and etc. So I understand all viewers are eagerly awaiting to listen your expertise, Dr. Pankaj, and I request all attendees to have a more interaction with the QA box of this platform. So with this honor and brief introduction, I request Dr. Pankaj Sakdev to deliver today's webinar on the topic of applications of optical absorption spectroscopy in material science. It's over to you, Dr. Pankaj.
Thanks, Dr. Ashish. Let me first thank Dr. Ashish and the organizer for inviting me for this webinar. And I'll be really happy to share with you some of the recent outcomes from our laboratory. And actually, when we have initiated this particular, the discussion of this today's meeting, Dr. Ashish said that some of the participants will be the graduate students, some of them will be the at the master level, and some of them will also be from the research level. So in fact, I have designed my lecture in a very simple manner so that I can give you the importance of, I can convey you the importance of optical absorption spectroscopy. So as Dr. Ashish said that I am basically from IIT Indore, and this is one of the first building of IIT Indore where we have started. But now we have more than 12 such buildings, and we are working with a full swing. Okay, so you are all welcome here to visit IIT Indore, and if some of you are willing to join IIT Indore, they can always contact me for the guidance. I'll be happy to help you. This is whatever the results which I will be presenting today. I have only guided my students, and all the work is basically of my students. Okay. So the plan of my talk will goes as follows. First, I will introduce the absorption phenomena in general. Then one of the important applications of optical absorption spectroscopy in material science is the characterization of the semiconductor material. We will just touch how to understand the semiconductors in general, what we know about the semiconductors. Then we will also discuss why the optical absorption spectroscopy for semiconductors. We will also discuss about the transmission and reflective experiment using the optical absorption spectroscopy. We will also try to understand something about the disorder. I will come to this particular topic in a greater detail later on. And then we will also discuss some of the recent results. And actually, as I said, I would like to give you the glimpse how important this particular optical absorption spectroscopy is. And let me tell you one thing very frankly, a very good optical absorption setup, in fact, you can make in your lab, and even the commercial one will not cost more than 10 lakh rupees. So this is, to be very frank, it's really very economical technique and a really powerful one. Okay, so please keep this in mind. Really economical and the powerful one. Okay. So let us start about the absorption. I think this is the one of the first absorption spectra which all of us are aware of. We know that we have learned the Bohr theory of hydrogen atom. In fact, when I have learned the Bohr theory of hydrogen atom, I could not pronounce the Bohr very clearly, so we are used to say Bohr theory. It's really boring theory. So, okay, let it be. But it's a Bohr theory of hydrogen atom which we are all familiar with, and this is the very first absorption spectra which we have been introduced in 10+2 or 10+1 at that particular level. And here what exactly we learn is the following, that when you shine the high energy electrons or high energy photons, then you can basically see the absorption of that particular energy when you basically throw this beam of light or beam of, as I said, electrons on the hydrogen gas. And using the this absorption spectra, just a second. हेलो, मेरा लेक्चर चल रहा है अभी यहाँ पे. Using this absorption spectra, what we have essentially concluded is that for each absorption dip or for each absorption peak, there associate a energy level corresponding to that particular energy. Okay, so this is a very simple conclusion what we have basically drawn, and it was from the very simple absorption experiment. Okay, now let us come back to the semiconductor, insulator, and the metal. We know that in the case of metals, the valence band and the conduction band, these are essentially overlapped. In the case of semiconductor, this particular band gap is of the order of 1 or 2 electron volts. If you have more than that, then it is called wide band gap semiconductor material. And in the case of insulators, this particular band gap is very high, above more than 6 electron volts, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is a very simple the characterization of metal, insulator, and the semiconductor which we are aware of. Okay, so now let us see, keep in mind this particular optical absorption spectra, okay, and the consequence of this particular spectra. Now let us revisit the electromagnetic spectrum. So we know that as far as visible region is concerned, the visible range starts from very close to 400 nanometer to very close to 760 nanometer, something like that. And then if you now calculate the corresponding energy, you will realize that the energy is very close to that of 1, 2, or 3 electron volt, which may be the which lies into the band gap of this particular semiconductor material. Okay. So now, what does it mean? It means that if I shine a photon of energy which is very close to the energy of the band gap, then this photon may be absorbed to excite the electrons from the valence band to the conduction band. Okay. Now, when you talk about the interaction of radiation with the matter, then you know, all of us are aware that either you will have finite reflection or finite transmission or finite absorption in a such a way that the total energy is always constant. Okay, so some part of the energy is used to absorb, used in the absorption. Maybe it's a molecular excitation or electronic excitation, something like that, or some part of the ray is transmitted through multiple scattering, or some part of the beam is reflected back by the material. Okay, so all these three phenomena may occur, and the thing is that in this particular case, the total energy always remain constant. Keep this in mind. Okay, so if you increase the one part, obviously the other part will decrease. Okay, so now when I say absorption, when I say the transmission of electron from this valence band to the conduction band, then I need to basically understand this in a greater detail using quantum mechanics. And if you remember your laser physics lectures, then what we have studied in those laser physics lectures is that they involved a probability of transmission from one level to the other level. Okay, so now one must calculate this probability of transmission using some well-known theoretical models. And as far as this absorption phenomena is concerned, one can best describe this particular absorption phenomena using the very famous Fermi-Golden rule. And what happens in the Fermi-Golden rule is the following. So you basically consider a quantum mechanical system with the Hamiltonian H0 with a wave function psi naught such that it satisfies this particular equation. Okay, this equation. Okay. Now what I do is that I put the electromagnetic wave, a sinusoidal perturbation, which is described by this particular formula. Okay, and this particular I omega t basically represent the sinusoidal part of the perturbation. So when I put this perturbation, then if the system absorbs this electromagnetic perturbation, then this Fermi-Golden basically rule describe the probability of transition from state 1 to state, means initial state to the final state. Okay, and when you put this particular perturbation, then and when you solve the Schrodinger wave equation, you will realize that this is the solution of the Schrodinger wave equation which we get, and the square of this particular term will give you the probability of transition of electron from initial state to the final state. Okay, so now coming back to this particular equation, so once you know the probability of transition from initial state to the final state, then let us perform some experiment keeping in view this particular equation. Okay, this equation I'm saying, the law of conservation of energy. So the total incident energy is used in absorption plus transmission plus reflection. Okay, and you know that this is essentially the scattering of so this particular part and this particular part is a scattering, and this is basically the absorption of the electromagnetic wave. Okay, so what I do is the following. I put the sample, and what I do is that I perform the reflectivity, optical reflectivity experiment. Okay, very simple optical reflectivity experiment in a such a way that I can change the energy of the incident light. Okay, how you can change the energy of the incident light? You can use some grating. Suppose you have the white source of light, and if you have the grating, then you can choose a particular color of light, and you can flash that particular color of the light on your sample. And as a result of that, you will basically perform the experiment of optical reflectivity as a function of incident energy or wavelength. Okay. So now when I perform this particular experiment, this type of experiment on the sample, I get this type of graph. Okay. This is the experimental graph which I get. Okay. So what I'm doing is that I am performing a very simple optical reflectivity experiment. Okay. So now you realize, you can understand that, I hope you can see this cursor. So if you look into this particular graph in a detail, you will realize that when the energy of the incident photon is small enough, the reflectance is very large. Okay. And as soon as the energy of the photon is very close to the energy band gap of this particular material, then at the same point, the reflectivity drops drastically. Okay, there is a sudden drop in the reflectivity, and this is a very important message of this particular experiment. Okay, really important message of this particular experiment. So what we are doing is that we are performing a very simple optical reflectivity experiment as a function of energy or wavelength, and we are just measuring the reflectivity as a function of energy. And what is the observation? Observation is that when the energy of the photon is small enough, then you get the significant amount of reflectivity, and as soon as the energy of the photon matches with this particular energy of the band gap, at the same time reflectivity drops. What does it mean? It means that as soon as the energy of the photon is equal to the energy of the band gap, the photon is absorbed to excite the electron from valence band to conduction band, and as a result of that, since you increase this particular part absorption, so obviously the reflectivity will decrease because the total energy is constant. Okay, since the total energy is constant, so therefore if you increase this one, obviously reflectivity is decreased, and this particular energy exactly correspond to the energy band gap of this particular sample. Okay, so what is the message? By performing a very simple optical absorption optical reflectivity experiment, you can basically find out the energy band gap of this particular material. Now you need to convert this particular data into the absorption. There is something which is called Kubelka-Munk model or tau theory. Using those theoretical model, you can basically convert this reflectivity spectra into the absorption spectra, and you can essentially find out the energy band gap using a very simple optical reflectivity experiment. Okay, I hope this is clear. So this is something which I was talking about. In fact, if you have a white source of light, which is a matter of, I think you can get a very good white source of light, a very powerful white source of light by Philips, by GE, less than 2,000 rupees, I think. In fact, you can design your own optics to make the basically to make the beam parallel. Then you can have some dispersive grating or a prism, something like that. Then once again you need to put the optics, then your sample and the detector. Okay, so this is what you can do. But the commercial spectrophotometer looks something like this. So it has a white source of light, which is a xenon lamp. As I said, the Philips and the General Electric both produces the very good white source of light, and the cost is less than 2,000 rupees for the R&D purpose. That's what I understand. Okay, then you have the corresponding optics, and then you have the grating, something monochromator here, grating, and then you choose a particular light focus it on your sample, your this is basically once more the reflective surface. This is your sample and the detector. So the actual commercial spectrophotometer looks something like this. Okay, and as I said, you can basically measure the optical reflectivity, and you can analyze the band, the data to find out the band gap. In fact, if you look into this particular data in a greater detail, you will find there are some other absorption peaks. Okay, and now if you look into the energy of these absorption peak, then you will realize that this is essentially in the infrared region. Okay, so this is essentially due to some type of vibrations which are associated with the molecules. Okay, so so using a very simple optical reflectivity experiment, you can find out the optical band gap, which is the sharp band gap here, and you can in fact, if your spectrophotometer is powerful enough to record the infrared part of the absorption spectra, then you can also find the molecular vibration, some information about the molecular vibration. But in fact, to be very frank with you, the infrared spectroscopy is a separate spectroscopy, which is much more powerful than this, as far as this molecular vibration is concerned. In fact, you have Raman spectroscopy also to understand this vibration part in a greater detail. But as far as the semiconductor is concerned, one of the important characteristics of the semiconductor is the band gap of the semiconductor. So which you can obviously find out using something which is called a very simple optical reflectivity experiment. Okay, so this is the message which I wanted to give to the students, so that they can keep in mind that they can find out the band gap of semiconductor material using a very simple optical absorption spectroscopy. So these are some more experimental data which I have shown for the other samples, for example zinc oxide, so on and so forth. Okay, now let us talk beyond the band gap using the same optical reflectivity experiment or optical absorption spectroscopy. Okay, so now let us revisit those things which we have studied in our BSc first year or second year. So you know that when you talk about the actual crystalline system, so every crystalline system have some type of defects associated with that particular sample. So what are those defects? So defects are basically the vacancies, interstitial, self-interstitial, Frankel defects, you have dislocation, you have line dislocation, you have screw dislocation, and you have so many type of defects which are present in your sample. Okay, now the thing is that if you analyze these defects in a greater detail, you get a very important message. Okay, so there is a consequence. Let's see, the thing is that you cannot enter inside the crystal. No one of us can enter inside the crystal structure and see, okay, where is the defect, so on and so forth. So the thing is that as a result of this defect, you get some information in some type of experiment. Means, for example, if you look into these defects here or here or here, what you realize is that near to the defect, the lattice parameter is slightly different. For example, you can see here. Okay, so the near to the defect, the lattice parameter is slightly different. Okay, so as a result of that, what happens is that you have one set of lattice parameter. Okay, and suddenly you have this particular periodicity is break due to the presence of impurity atoms or defects which may present in your sample. Okay, so now let us analyze this defect in the terms of disorder into the lattice parameter. Okay, so this is the very simple the energy momentum relation, which all of us are familiar with. We know that when you study the Brillouin zone, what we essentially do is that we associate the de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron with the lattice parameter, and then we basically apply the Bragg's law over there. Okay, and we basically simply use the Bragg law, and then what we do is that we write the k in terms of momentum, and then this is something which you basically get the condition for reflection, Bragg reflection of the electron wave into the lattice. I am talking about the Bragg reflection of electron wave into the periodic lattice. Okay, periodic is very, very important stuff, condition. So now, if you look into this particular relation or this particular relation, so you can put value of k here, and you know that there is something which is called the lattice period is coming into the picture. I hope you can see the cursor. So since this lattice period is coming into the picture, so now when you have no distribution into the A is constant throughout the sample. So you have a perfect sample or ideal sample. Then what you get, the value of energy is extremely sharp. Now you assume that you have a set of d values which are very closely spaced. Closely spaced is a very, very important word. So when you have closely spaced, so now I have just drawn one of the section of this particular EK diagram in the next slide. So when you have disorder into the value of A, what you essentially get is the following. So you get spread of energy, but the dark line is always at a defined, because let's see, most of the unit cell, they are defect free. You have defects, the order of the defect is very, very small, 10 raised to power 16, 10 raised to power 18 out of 10 raised to power 23. So it's really small one. Okay, but you get some faint states into the energy as a result of this disorder into the A. And why you get the disorder into A? The disorder in lattice parameter is essentially due to various defects present into the sample. So defect gives disorder into the value of lattice parameter, and this disorder into the value of lattice parameter reflected into the spreading of energy. Okay, so what exactly happens is the following. So you have valence band and the conduction band. So this is the ideal sample, and when you basically increase the disorder, you get something which is called tail states near to the valence band and near to the conduction band into your sample. Okay, so these are the tail states. Okay, so now if you perform the optical absorption spectroscopy on these type of samples having finite disorder, then what you will realize is the following. I have basically enlarged this particular section into this particular slide. So what we understand is the following. When you have very small disorder present into the sample, the absorption is really very sharp, and when you increase the disorder, the rate at which the absorption is falling, it's not the sharp one, but it's exponentially, basically the alpha of the exponential decay will change. Okay, and from the value of this, how you are basically, what is the value of alpha, that from that the value of alpha you can basically quantify the amount of disorder, which is essentially the electronic disorder, which is as a result of defects present into your system, is something which you can estimate quantitatively using optical absorption spectroscopy. Okay, or using simple reflectivity experiment. This is a simple reflectivity experiment, which is basically the reflectivity spectra is converted into the absorption spectra using Kubelka-Munk model. or tau plot, you can say. And then you analyze the tail part of this particular optical absorption spectra, and you see how the optical absorption is falling down. Okay, and from that and from the quantitative analysis of e raised to or minus alpha type of stuff, you can basically quantitatively determine the disorder which is present into the sample. So what we have learned so far is that using very simple optical absorption spectroscopy, you can find out the band gap. And further, if you analyze the tail part of the optical absorption spectra, you can also find something which is called electronic disorder. This is also called Urbach energy in the literature. So you can find out the amount of electronic disorder present into your samples. Okay, and this particular disorder is essentially due to some type of defects or some type of disorder which is present in your samples. Okay, so now let us try to understand how what are the other techniques to probe the disorder. So one of the technique which some of us may be aware of is the X-ray diffraction technique. So in the case of X-ray diffraction, what we essentially do is that we find out we basically analyze the FWHM, means peak width of the diffraction peak, and using this particular analysis one can find out the strain, and this also have the information about which is essentially due to the various type of disorder or defects which may present in our sample. So this particular X-ray diffraction market wise, it's a matter of very close to 70 to 80 lakhs rupees, whereas as I said, optical absorption technique is much more economical, maybe 10 times cheaper as compared to X-ray diffraction. High resolution electron microscopy, it's a matter of 10 crores nowadays. So optical spectroscopy is much economical. Similarly, Raman spectroscopy, it's a matter of 1 crore rupees. In the Raman spectroscopy also, one need to analyze the width of the phonon peak. Then you have the photoluminescence technique, which can be used to find out it is also a matter of 70-80 lakh rupees. And finally, the valence band spectroscopy. In fact, there are some other techniques also, but these are the most popular techniques which are used to quantify the disorder which may present in our sample. So all these techniques are really very much popular, but as I said, these are really expensive one. So the optical absorption spectroscopy is not only economical, but it's equally powerful. Okay, so keep this in mind. So if you are intelligent enough, you can basically use the optical absorption spectroscopy for really for various purposes. Okay, and that's what actually I wanted to convey today. So now let us come to the one more application of optical absorption spectroscopy. Okay, so when we have discussed these defects, okay, here when we have discussed these defects, so there are vacancies, you have impurity atoms, so on and so forth. So as a result of this defect, we know from our semiconductor physics knowledge that when you put the donor type of impurity, you get the donor level. When you put the acceptor type of impurity into the lattice, you get the acceptor level near to the valence band. So, and when you have defect, when you have some type of defects which is present into the lattice, it basically adds some level to your energy band diagram of that particular material, and what is essentially happens is that you get the levels between the valence band and the conduction band. Okay, so this is something which all of us are aware of. Okay, from a very simple 10+2 knowledge of semiconductor. Okay, I know that all of us have studied these semiconductors in +2. Okay, so this is something which we are aware of. Okay. So now let us perform the optical absorption spectroscopy or optical reflectivity experiment with more intelligent way. You need to basically perform the differential type of optical absorption spectroscopy experiment. Basically, the thing is that you need a pure sample, you need a sample with defects, and then you subtract one spectra from the other, or you perform some other type of spectroscopy. Basically the same optical absorption spectroscopy in different way. So let us see, this is the optical absorption spectra of one of the sample having the oxygen defects which are present in the sample. So now this is the optical absorption spectra. So these particular peaks are due to basically it is essentially due to the electronic structure of that particular material. This is the value, this particular drop into the optical reflectivity correspond to the band gap. And then there is one more peak you can see here. Okay, you can see here, and what we claim that this particular peak is essentially due to oxygen defect in this particular case, which may present in our sample. In fact, we have produced the sample with the oxygen defect. Okay, we have deliberately produced the oxygen defect. Okay, so the thing is that when you perform the differential optical absorption spectroscopy experiment, you can essentially find out the states which are due to the defects which are present into the sample. Okay, now if you look into the quantitative value of this absorption here, it's very small. So it means that the amount of defect is really small enough as compared to the actual band. So these defect, so these are the defect states which are present into the sample, and that is also reflected into the optical absorption spectroscopy. Okay, so in fact, what you can do, is the following. In the case of zirconium oxide, what we have done is the following. We have produced the zirconium vacancy, we have also produced the oxygen vacancy, and if you see the states due to oxygen vacancy, it's coming very close to 2.5 electron volt, and the states due to zirconium vacancy is coming very close to 1 electron volt. Okay, so now and this is once again you can see this particular data, where you can see that there is a state between 2 to 2.5 electron volt, something like this. So you can not only quantify whether you have a defect state or not, but you can also predict this particular defect state is due to, whether it is due to zirconium type of ZR vacancy or due to oxygen vacancy, something like that. So it's really powerful tool. Okay, so what I want to convey you is that it's really a very powerful tool. Okay, so and this is one more spectra which we have shown. So this is the first thing is that if you can basically divide this optical absorption spectra in 3 parts. One, the sharp absorption is due to the band gap. The tail region will give you the Urbach tail state, which is essentially the electronic disorder present in your lattice. And then you have the lower state, which is essentially due to some type of vacancies or defects which are present into your samples. Okay, so this is the 3 very powerful information which you can get. In fact, these results are published by one of my student, Dr. Vikas Mishra. He is now a postdoc in IIT Bombay. So these results are published by Dr. Vikas long back. So now let us come back to the introduction of electromagnetic wave. What else we can essentially find out using these type of experiment? Okay, so what we have done so far, we have find out the band gap, we have find out the electronic disorder. We can also estimate whether there are any defect states which are present into the sample. Okay. So now, you know, from Griffith, from basic electromagnetic theory, is that the transmission and the reflection of the electromagnetic wave is essentially dictated by the values of the refractive index of that particular material. Okay, so now if you just revisit your BSc first year chapter of optics, interference in thin films, you know that the condition for the constructive interference condition is basically given by 2 mu t cos theta equal to n lambda. And the thing is that in this particular case, the only requirement is that to get the constructive and the destructive interference pattern, the thickness of the film must be of the order of the wavelength of the light which you are using. Okay, so that is the requirement. Okay, so if you perform the transmission or reflection experiment on a thin film sample having a substrate which is optically transparent, okay, then what you can essentially do is that you can get such type of interference pattern, the constructive destructive pattern into the transmission spectra or reflection spectra, and from this data you can estimate something which is called the refractive index as a function of energy for a given sample. Okay, so we can find out, not only find out the band gap, electronic disorder or presence of defect, you can also estimate something which is a very important optical parameter, is the refractive index of a sample. In fact, as I said, I'm just trying to focus on the applications of optical absorption spectroscopy. You can get the details of this in various fundamental books, maybe by White or there is one book by Brijlal and Subramaniam on optics, and there are some research paper. So you can use those to understand this, how to find out the refractive index using the simple transmission and the reflection spectra. Okay, you can also in fact contact me in case of any difficulties. So what we have concluded so far is that optical absorption spectroscopy appears to be really very sensitive tool to probe the energy band gap of the semiconductor material, disorder which may present near to the band edge, and one can even probe the presence of defect state into the sample. And obviously you can also calculate, you can also estimate the important optical parameter which is the refractive index. Okay, now let us go beyond the this conventional semiconductor material, and let us perform the optical absorption spectroscopy experiment on the samples which are really popular in research community. So one of such sample is the barium titanate. So barium titanate is one of the samples which was investigated by various research group. In fact, still it is one of the hot sample to understand the physics of phase transitions. In fact, if you are familiar with this sample, then you know that this particular sample of barium titanate shows various structural phase transition as a function of temperature. So you can basically, when you lower the temperature of the sample, it transforms from cubic to tetragonal to orthorhombic, and orthorhombic to rhombohedral. So these particular sample shows various structural phase transition. So what we have done is that we have designed a setup in our lab. In fact, one of my research students, he developed such setup in the lab for basically measuring the temperature dependent optical reflectivity spectra. And this was very simple setup. Okay, so this particular setup can operate in a temperature range from room temperature up to very close to 500 K. Now we can go up to 550 K. and you can basically perform the UV visible extrusion in this particular with this particular setup in the range of 200 nanometer to 800 nanometer. Okay, and this is something which we have published in one of the instrumentation journal. And what we have done is that we have measured the optical spectra as a function of temperature. And using this particular spectra, what we have estimated is the band gap, and then we have plotted the band gap as a function of temperature. So you can see that when you increase the temperature, band gap is systematically decreasing, and the point at which the sample goes from tetragonal phase to the cubic phase, at the same point there is a sudden jump into the value of band gap. Okay, there is a sudden jump into the value of band gap. Okay, so now if you look into this, so these are the high temperature extrusion which we are, high temperature region we are basically dealing with. So this is the dielectric data of the same sample. This is the value of the lattice parameter for the same sample. Okay, and we are dealing with the high temperature region. As you can understand that this particular setup which we have designed is designed for high temperature measurements. It doesn't apply for the this particular low temperature part. So you can see that when you perform this dielectric measurement, there is hardly any hysteresis. In fact, these are along the different direction, but even if you measure the in heating cycle and cooling cycle, there is very small hysteresis. In fact, we have measured this particular hysteresis in the value of band gap into the heating and the cooling cycle, and you can see that the hysteresis is really very small when you measure the band gap as a function of temperature. Okay, so since we had the complete optical absorption data, so we have the value of band gap and we also have the value of Urbach energy with us. So what we have done along with the band gap, we have also plotted the Urbach energy as a function of temperature in heating and cooling cycle both. And this is the result. So when we plot the Urbach energy or the electronic disorder in heating and cooling cycle, what we observe that there is a significant amount of hysteresis present into the sample. Okay, and this was really a very surprising result for us. In fact, we have repeated this experiment almost 10 times, more than 10 times I will say, and the result exactly reproduce every time. Okay, with some obviously some error bars. So what does it mean? It means that if you are looking into the lattice parameter, if you are looking into the dielectric constant, or if you are looking into the band gap, then these are not really a proper order parameter to look into the hysteresis, region of hysteresis or region of phase coexistence. If you are familiar with this hysteresis type of stuff, then you will realize that in the case of first order phase transition, the some amount of phase in a region of, in the hysteresis region coexist, means the sample coexist in two different phases. Means in this particular case, it present in cubic and tetragonal both. Means for example, if you are familiar with the solid to ice to water type of phase transition, then you understand that there is a region where both ice and the water coexist. Okay, so in the same way, if you want to see the region of coexistence of cubic and the tetragonal phase, then the lattice parameter and the value of dielectric constant or the value of band gap may not be the proper choice. In fact, what we have suggested is that the electronic disorder is the more accurate parameter to probe such region of hysteresis. And in fact, we have further analyzed this to prove that this particular is really a phase coexisting region. For that, we have performed some stretch exponent coefficient fitting. Basically, we have performed the time dependent measurement on these at various temperature, and which essentially confirms that there exists a phase coexistence in the region of hysteresis. Okay. And this was also published by the same student, Dr. Vikas Mishra, in Journal of Applied Physics. So the thing is that with this particular example, what I wanted to convey is that you can use this optical absorption spectroscopy for analyzing the first order phase transition, which is one of the very hot area in condensed matter physics. Okay, so the optical absorption spectroscopy is now opening up the new avenue to understand not only the electronic band gap, the conventional electronic band gap, conventional electronic disorder, the defect state, but it's also now helping us to understand the phase transitions in greater detail. Okay, very, very greater detail, I will say. So with this, I will stop here. So the overall, what I have conveyed as of now is that uh, uh, you can use this optical absorption spectroscopy to probe the not only the semiconductor but also the various important samples of your interest intelligently, so that you can characterize your material in a new way, to explore the new possibility, to explore the new understanding in condensed matter physics and material sciences. Okay, I really thank you for your attention, and I will look forward for your questions.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pankaj. Are you having those questions in the list? Are you able to see those questions, or I request Dr. Alka Deshmukh to read and get it?
Okay, should I start with the questions?
Hi, yes, please.
Okay. There are quite a few questions, around 13 questions. So I'll just go one by one. First question is regarding the optical instruments, because they contain reflectors. They want to know how much error will be generated because of these reflectors.
Let's see, as far as errors are concerned, it's not only due to reflectors. There are various, I will say, there are various parameters which basically contribute to the errors. Okay, but what I will say is that one of the best way to perform the optical absorption spectroscopy experiment is the following. Let's see, what you do is that you take a sample which is having a very, very slow aging. Let's see, you know that all the sample have some aging effect. Aging effect means, if you now suppose you take zinc oxide, you keep that particular zinc oxide as a standard material for in your lab. Okay, so whenever you are performing the optical absorption spectroscopy experiment with your sample, so at the same, for the same setting, for on the same day, what you can do is that you can also perform the same zinc oxide which is a standard material which is for your lab. Okay, so every time when you perform the want to basically estimate the value of electronic band gap or electronic disorder, before doing that you first verify that you are getting the same value of band gap and the value of electronic disorder for the zinc oxide, which is a standard. Okay, and when I say standard, it means that you have already estimated the you have already characterized that particular zinc oxide for some values, means for the value of electronic disorder and for the values of band gap. Okay, so every time you perform the standard sample, and then you can basically see whether your optics of your instrument is really contributing to some error into the measurements. Because what happens is that slowly with time, the various reflectors which are present into your optical spectrophotometer, that will develop some type of surface erosion, actually gets rough due to fungal growth, so on and so forth. And as a result of that, the optical reflectivity slightly modifies. So you need to have the standard sample so that you can basically verify or you are aware of what is the errors, if any, which is present due to the reflectors which are from your spectrophotometer. Alka, you are not audible. Hello.
I'm sorry. Fermi-Golden rules, could you explain that again?
Okay. Actually, this is the, let me just go to the, actually, as I said, these essentially tell us how, what is the probability of transfer of electron from initial state to the final state. And what is essentially done is that, let's see, when you, when I have started this stuff, let's see, when I say that, when I shine a light of a sufficient energy on a sample, then this particular light will be absorbed by the sample to excite the electron from valence band to the conduction band. Okay. So when I say excitation, so excitation is a phenomena, and every phenomena has some probability. And this Fermi-Golden rule is essentially a methodology to find out the probability of transition from initial state to the final state using a very simple quantum mechanical understanding. And you know that, let's see, what happens, there is a very good statement by Lord Rayleigh. Okay, so what Lord Rayleigh said very close to 1905 or 1906, what he said that if you can measure what you are talking about, then you really know something about it. If you cannot measure that particular quantity, then your knowledge is incomplete. So we are trying to measure the probability of transition from initial state to final state using Schrodinger wave equation type of calculation. And for that, we are taking the help of Fermi-Golden's rule. So Fermi-Golden rule is essentially you basically put the sinusoidal, I will say, the perturbation onto the system, and with this sinusoidal perturbation, there is a finite probability that the electron may tunnel or may move from initial state to the final state, and that probability of a transition we are trying to estimate using Schrodinger wave equation type of analysis. In fact, this is well explained in Schiff, or very good, which is very good book on quantum mechanics. So I will request the graduate student at least to look into this particular book for the detailed answer.
Thank you. Next question is it possible to calculate particle size using UV?
Okay, that's really very good question. In fact, as you know that the value of band gap is a function of particle size. Okay, so now if you have distribution to the means, now assume that you are in a means all the particles which are available in the samples which are below Bohr exciton radius for that particular material. So you are in the quantum confinement region, and you have now in that particular region you have distribution of particle sizes. Okay, so now you will have different value of band gap. Okay, so as a result of that, this particular optical absorption spectra, okay, this particular optical absorption spectra, let me come to the, this particular optical absorption spectra will not be sharp, but this will be something like this. So from this particular slope, in fact, we have given one model what you can do, Alka, is that I can share one paper, our recent paper, where we have used the optical absorption spectroscopy to estimate the particle size distribution. Okay, so I can share that particular paper with the candidate and with all of you, which you can basically, in fact, as I said, from this particular slope, we have given one model to estimate the particle size. But for that, the basic prerequisite is that the sample must be in a nano region. So all the particle must be below the value of Bohr exciton radius for that particular material. So I know that I have not answered this particular question in a greater detail, but what I will do is that I will share one of the recent publication of ours where we have used this particle size distribution stuff we have used the optical absorption spectra to analyze the particle distribution.
Yeah, sure. I think at the end of the session, we would share your email address also. So if there are any further queries, I think we can have it there. I'll go to the next question.
Yeah, please.
How to indicate type of defects from electronic transition taking place into the sample?
Yeah, actually, let us see, means whether the thing is that using the optical absorption spectroscopy, you cannot identify the type of defect, means whether it is the point defect or it's due to dislocation, something like that. But what you can essentially say is that if you can see the tail state, then it is essentially due to the which is essentially due to the spread in the value of lattice parameter, and this spread in the value of lattice parameter is assumed to be due to the some type of disorder or some type of defects present in the sample. But the thing is that you cannot say that this particular is due to this type of defect. So you cannot identify defect using optical absorption spectroscopy, whether it is a Frankel defect or, as I said, point defect or dislocation, something like that. You cannot do that.
I believe there is one more question in continuation to this only, that what if it is not possible to detect which type of defect is there using UV, what are the other methods which we can use for detecting the type of defects?
No, I could not get the question. Can you just repeat this?
If we cannot understand which defect is there from UV, which other method can be used to find out the type of defect?
Okay, good, very good question. I think for that, the best way is to perform the transmission electron microscopy with imaging and diffraction mode both. Okay, only imaging mode will not give you any information, but imaging mode and diffraction mode, and you will have to also do something which is called convergent beam electron diffraction measurement in the region of defect, in the region of your interest. So with these three techniques, imaging, diffraction, and convergent beam electron diffraction method, you can basically concretely say that this is this type of defect. Okay, because the electron microscopy below me, extremely powerful technique. But what happened is that nowadays this electron microscopy become a camera, simple camera. So the thing is that you will have to understand the potentials of transmission electron microscopy to analyze the defects in a greater detail. It's not everyone's cup of tea. You please believe me. It's a TEM is very, very involved subject. Electron microscopy is very involved subject, and you will have to basically very carefully understand the physics of electron beam diffraction or electrons beam scattering to understand the defects in a sample in a greater detail. Okay, it's a very, very involved subject.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, could you explain more about the opaque energy and its significance? I believe the entire talk was on this, but could you just put it in short?
Okay, yeah. Let us see. I'm not sure if my presentation is still visible to the students or not.
It is. Yes, it is visible.
Okay, good. So let us see, as I said, this is the de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron. And now we are trying to estimate the condition of Bragg reflection of the electron wave in a periodic lattice. Okay, periodic is the very important word here. Okay, so we are talking about the periodic lattice, and we are talking about the de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron in a periodic system. Okay, so now using simple Bragg diffraction in a K space, we can find out the condition for Bragg reflection for the electron wave in a periodic system. Okay, so now what I am doing here is just very simple stuff. We know that for parabolic potential wave, you have this type of energy and momentum relation. So I'm basically writing this particular energy and momentum relation in K space for the energy of the electron. I'm using this value of K in this particular energy in this particular equation 10.22. You can use Arthur Beiser to understand these things in a greater detail. Okay, lecture chal raha hai. So you can use this particular relation. Okay, so now if you have unique value of A, so this unique value of A will give you unique value of E, because rest of the other thing are constant. Okay, so now the scattering angle theta is also your detector is also constant. Okay, so now since everything is fixed, so therefore unique value of A will produce unique value of E. Okay, so now suppose I have defects which are present into the system. So now first of all, you consider the ideal lattice without any defect. So you have a unique set of only one set of means, for example, for the cubic system, let us consider the cubic system for simplicity. So you have only one value of lattice parameter throughout the sample. Okay, so this is for the ideal case. So now the thing is that you have some type of defects which are present into the sample. So now see this type of defects, these type of defects, or this type of defect, or this type of defect. So near to the defect, what happens is that the periodicity is getting disturbed. Okay, so as a result of this particular disturbance, what happens is that the value of A here is not unique, so you will get the different values of A, isn't it? So when you have different values of A, so you will have spread into the energy. So what I have said in this particular transparency or slide is the following. This is the dark line, very dark line, a very sharp line. But these are the defect tail states, which are very diffuse one. So this diffuse is essentially due to the spread into the value of lattice parameter, and you can see this. Ignore this particular part. Okay, just focus on this particular part. So these are the tail states which are very diffuse one. Okay, and this band is very sharp. Okay, so this sharp band is due to the unique value of lattice parameter, which is true for most of the lattice. But wherever you have very small amount of defects which are present into the system, so you will get these tail states, and this tail state will essentially reflect into the tail part of the optical absorption spectra, and this is essentially the origin of the Urbach tail state. I hope I have answered your question.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what techniques can be adopted for maximum absorption? And I believe there is one more additional question which is in line with this. How much transmission and absorption is required for both spectroscopies to get the required result?
Okay, that's a really very good question, I will say. Let us see. As I said, when I started this particular talk, in fact, you need to perform this particular experiment very intelligently. Okay, So let us come to the something which is called a specular and the non-specular reflection. Okay, so what is the specular reflection? Specular reflection is a reflection, means let us say when the angle of incident and the angle of reflection is same. Now you put the detector at the specular part, means according to the Snell's law, suppose if I put the detector here. Okay, so then what Snell's law said that at the angle of incident is exactly equal to angle of reflection. Okay, so which is essentially the specular part. Okay, so now let us take into account the probability of absorption. I am saying probability of absorption once again. So now you assume that there is only 2% absorption. Okay, so and you are putting your detector into the specular region. Okay, so what does it mean? That you send the 100 photon, there is a high probability that the 2 photon will be get absorbed by the material, and you will get the 98 number of photons into your detector. Okay, only 2 photons are absorbed. Okay, so now you move your detector to the non-specular region. Okay, so when you are moving to the non-specular region, the probability of getting the photon into the non-specular region will automatically decrease as per the Snell's law. So in order to get the maximum information about the maximum absorption, you need to put your detector into the non-specular region, or what you do is the following: you basically make the surface of your sample very rough. Okay, so that even if you are putting your detector into the specular region, then you get a very small amount of reflectivity into the specular region. So the message is that you will need to perform this type of experiment very intelligently, so that you can get the information of absorption, or you can get the signal of absorption, a very strong signal of absorption, in other words. So you will have to basically perform non-specular type of measurements to enhance the absorption signal. I hope I have answered this question.
I believe it was regarding how to get maximum absorption. So I think
yes.
I think it's answered.
Yes.
The next question is, does a material have multiple optical band gap? If yes, how to justify it?
Okay, actually, let's see, you can, I am not sure whether I have those data here. Let me just see. Yeah. You can see these are further absorption peaks. Let me just see it. Yeah. Let's see these are the some extra absorption peak which I'm getting into the absorption spectra. In fact, let us see, when you talk about the band gap is always unique. But okay, you can have the multiple transitions. Okay, you can have a state which is slightly above the band gap, and if the energy of the photon is high enough to excite the electron from top of the valence band to that particular state, then you can get the multiple absorption into the optical absorption spectra. So the thing is that you can get that particular information, but the let's see, how we define band gap is that maxima of the valence band and the minima of the conduction band. So minima is a unique stuff. So you cannot have multiple type of band gap, but you can have multiple states which are present into the sample, which is essentially due to the electronic structure of that particular sample. In fact, I know that there is a paper on LaFeO3, lanthanum ferrite, where the authors have shown, using the density functional theoretical analysis, the authors have shown the multiple state, the presence of multiple states, and they have correlated these multiple states with the optical absorption spectra on their sample. So you cannot have the multiple band gap, but you can have multiple states which are available in the sample. I hope I have answered this question.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is, what are error bars in the band gap values and how one can minimize these?
Okay, as I said, the error, let's see, when you want to estimate the error, one of the simplest technique to estimate the error is you perform your experiment at least 5 to 10 times. Okay, and then you look into the statistical distribution. So that is the accidental error which you can basically find out. And if you really want to minimize the error, then the thing is that there are various optical parameter of your optical instrument. Means, for example, when you perform this particular experiment, let me go to the very first, yeah. When you performing this type of experiment, means when you are basically performing the optical reflection as a function of wavelength, so instrument will ask you what is the value of delta lambda you want to put. So you will have to put the minimum value of delta lambda in order to minimize the error into the measurement. So one way is that you perform the experiment n number of times, and secondly, you keep the data collection time high enough, you keep the delta lambda very small enough so that you can minimize your error. I hope I have answered this question.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, why reflectivity remains constant when energy of photon is decreasing right from cosmic rays till visible violet light?
No, it's not cosmic rays. Let me.
I believe it is gamma rays to
No,
visible light.
no, actually, maybe. No, let's see. If you start from the gamma rays, then you will always say, see, though absorption related to the those levels. Means, for example, if you are familiar with the X-ray absorption spectroscopy, the XENS or XAS, you will see the similar type of absorption in that region also. So it's not the constant. Okay, to be very frank. But if you are talking about this type of graph, means graph which is shown in this particular slide number 12, I'm not sure if you are looking, if you can look into the cursor.
Yes,
So if you are talking about, so if you can, if you are talking about this particular region, so first thing is that it's not the constant, but if you are talking about this type of region, it means that the conduction band, the state in the conduction band is really the uniform. So you are not really seeing the absorption due to this particular energy, or there doesn't exist energy level corresponding or a state corresponding to this particular energy of the photon. As simple as that. I hope I have answered the question.
There is a continuation to that.
So,
what would be
Pankaj, are you, if you have a time, I mean to say, are you free for 10 minutes more to take a question answer session?
Definitely, not an issue at all.
Okay. And also we can do like that if some of the questions are very elaborative. Okay, what we do, we can take by email. Okay, so you can answer those questions. Okay.
Yeah,
so
you can always share. You can always share my email address with the students and the who are attending. But I can spend my next 10 to 20 minutes to answer the questions. Not issue.
Okay, fine. Okay. Thank you.
So I'll just continue.
Yeah, please.
There are actually 2-3 questions. It's a little elaborate. What would be reflectivity when wavelength of photon is beyond visible? If in this case we have more reflectivity and less absorption or less transmission as compared to that of visible region, then why do we observe infrared and microwave spectra? Or do we have lesser probability for this?
No,
I believe you've answered this.
Yeah, I have answered it, but let me just elaborate my answer in a greater detail. Let's see, when you talk about any sample, each sample starts from the atom. Okay, so atom is having the different energy, means different energy level of electrons, Then these atoms come together, they form something which is called the band, the energy band in the solids. So you get basically the spread of valence electronic states, I will say. I'm saying valence electronic state, not the core one. And then when you have the lattice, your lattice is vibrating at certain well-known frequencies. So these are called lattice vibrations, and so on and so forth. So the thing is that if you talk about the energy of the photon, right from the X-rays, so if you now perform the absorption experiment as a function of energy and assume that you have a universal spectrophotometer where you can vary the energy of the photon right from keV up to MeV, small MeV, I'm saying, small m, milli electron volt. Okay, so assume that you have such spectrophotometer with you, and when you now measure the absorption as a function of energy, so initially you will see the absorption peak due to the excitation of electron from the core level to the valence level, which is called X-ray absorption. Then it will come to the something which is called UV absorption or visible absorption, which is the energy band diagram of that particular sample, which is what I means is that the transition of electron from valence band to the conduction band. Okay, then if you now further lower the energy, you will have the absorption due to the atomic vibrations. Okay, so here you talk about the either infrared spectroscopy on the solids or Raman spectroscopy on the solid. So here you will get the information about the vibrational states which are available into the samples. Okay, so the thing is that in order to see a particular phenomena, you will need, means for example, if you want to see the absorption, if you want to see the lattice absorption or lattice vibration, then the energy of the photon must be of the same order. Then only you will be able to see the resonance. Using optical spectroscopy, you cannot probe that because your energy is far from the resonance. So obviously, if you look into the Rutherford theory of scattering, then you know that the scattering cross section is infinite at the resonance the energy or resonance frequency. So if you are away from the resonance, obviously if you are using the visible light to probe the lattice vibration, then the scattering cross section is very small. You are much away from the resonance. Okay, so that's why you see the Raman spectroscopy, the probability of Raman scattering is 1 out of 1 lakh. Only one photon out of 1 lakh, 10 raised to the power 6 photons, only one photon will lead to the something which is called Raman scattering. Okay, so since you are far away from the resonance, obviously you will not able to see the atomic vibration using optical absorption spectroscopy. So for that, you will have to tune the energy of your electromagnetic wave or the photon very close to that particular energy which you want to probe, and then I think you will be able to see that. I hope I have answered this question.
Yeah, thank you, Pankaj. Yeah, yeah, we have more questions on the desk, but okay, already I provided your email so that they can join. I mean to say they can write you email. So I request those questions are missed over here, so can be discussed in the email also by sending you email. Okay, and also possibly. Also possibly we will make your presentation on YouTube channel later. Okay, so if certain questions arises later in the course, so you've been in touch with the participants. Okay, so
okay, how many of these are here?
Yeah, initially it was started around 70, but okay, now mark is around 40. Okay, so So maybe some people have not joined this link. They have certain that app and other issues. Okay. So
Okay.
but okay, fine. So I think we have covered most of the questions, and now it's the time 12:25. So I think I'll stop here with your permission.
Yeah, definitely. I really thank you for your invitation, and it was really very
Yes.
interactive session.
So it's my duty to have honor to be here with the okay. So and college have always given us such a kinds of opportunities, and this is the best opportunity right now. So interact with the digital platform to you all peoples are in the world everywhere wherever you are. Okay. So I thankful to all participants kindly attended over here. I also thankful to Dr. Alka Deshmukh who have conducted these question answer sessions very nice way, and authorities of Principal Ferguson College Pune, and the Department of Physics Ferguson College Pune. So I thankful to them all, and I thank you, Dr. Pankaj. We will be in touch with you, and
Definitely.
soon you are being live in a college. Okay,
Okay.
so
Thank you.
we'll
Thank
plan that. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank,
Thank you. Thank
thank
you.
you. So I'll end the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.